to Epilepsy Moms, episode 2. We are excited to see all of you again. I am Summer, and my son has generalized epilepsy. He is 14 years old.
And I am Liz, and my daughter is 7, and she has temporal lobe epilepsy with focal seizures. And today, with the You're Not Alone topic, we're going to first state the sites, and then we're going to give you some more info after that. So the sites that we go to for information, and you can also go to for more information, is www.epilepsy.com, or you can go to www.cureepilepsy.org. In the epilepsy.com, you can go in and get certified for your child. I know that there is a teacher link also, but I'm not sure how that works. I haven't done that side of it. Summer has done that side of the teacher portion. And
it's a really good class, and it just tells you what to expect in a school setting when you have a student have epilepsy.
Which is perfect.
So it's good for parents. Both classes are great. So yeah, definitely look into those.
And it's good for 2 years, so you can do it and just make sure you renew it every 2 years. Things are constantly changing. If you don't have good friends, family support, church that you connect with, anything like that you're going to need for this journey, there is definitely a lot of great Facebook groups. And a few of those are Epilepsy Support Group or Epilepsy Seizure Support Discussion, and then Parents of Kids with Epilepsy Seizures. And then there's also lots of local Facebook groups that you can also join. And as long as you just type in your city or your state, and then type in the word epilepsy or seizures after it, a lot of times it'll come up with a group that's more local for you that you can join.
Yeah, so those sites are really, really helpful. And when you are feeling alone in this and you don't have a good support system yet, or maybe you do, but you're still feeling like, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go to get information, those websites are really great. And I'm just going to throw a few facts at you that we've found were helpful on those websites that help us to not feel alone and to know that there are others out there who can understand where you're at and sympathize with you. And they're, we're all kind of in this same boat. So the 4 facts that we had pulled out were 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy at some time in their life. 6 out of 10 people will have a seizure at some point in their lifetime. And then 150,000 new cases of epilepsy occur every year in the United States. My son happens to fall into that category this year. The last one is 1/3 of people with epilepsy will end up having uncontrolled seizures. In other words, treatments do not work for them. And Liz's daughter may fall into that category. Go ahead.
5 ways that you could feel alone. 1 would be not enough support. So if you still are not finding a support group that works best for you, feel free to contact us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to be able to hear your story. You can get our email down in the description below. And number 2 is side effects for medications. A lot of times medications can cause our children to do crazy things or have different attitudes or mood swings or, lots of different things for each kid. They can make not just them feel sad and alone, but then we as parents will have that same feeling. And number 3, diagnosis. That's gonna, you're gonna feel alone in the diagnosis just because not everyone has someone to go to and run to when they first hear what the word epilepsy is for their child, or and then long hospital stays. Long hospital stays can be really lonely. A lot of times hospitals will have extra nurses or what's it called, Summer, where they come and they like play with your child. Child life specialist. They have child life specialists that are really great to talk to if you ever need anyone in the hospital. They have definitely helped my kiddo several times being there. And then number 4 is not feeling heard. If you're not feeling heard, a lot of times you're going to feel alone just because you're not getting your point across, or you're not understanding what the doctor's trying to tell you, or they're maybe not understanding what you're trying to tell them. A lot of times, that happens in the very beginning. I had that happen to me when the nurse was literally looking at me, telling me that my daughter was fine after she had just had several seizures that day. And I'm like, we hadn't been diagnosed yet, and I'm taking her in to get figured out what's going on. Why is she doing this? And he wasn't hearing me until he had to see it for himself. So that's a really hard feeling. And then number 5 is feeling alone for your child because you have your own anxiousness. So they're going to have their times of where they're sad and they don't feel like they're being heard, or they're not feeling, especially if they're teenagers. I'm sure Summer's gone through that a lot with her son. And when you have your own anxiousness, you can kind of get, in your head a little bit and feel kind of trapped.
Yeah. And it can definitely be tough with older kids and medications making them feel kind of down. That is partly why those websites that Liz was talking about in the beginning are so helpful. So if you have Facebook, like definitely sign up for those. Join those and get into those Facebook groups, because they will help you. You can go in and ask questions if your child is having behavioral issues or feeling depressed because of medications they're on, or if you're just distraught and worried and not knowing what to do next, or looking for a new doctor. Like, go on there and ask your questions. People are so helpful. They will answer those questions and try to help you out. So definitely go there to the Facebook pages. And then this kind of is really like a good discussion that leads us to the next thing, which is what we parents go through. And it's a little bit of a grieving process when you get that first diagnosis and your doctor is looking at you saying, this is what is going on. And you kind of go through this process of
like a tunnel vision almost.
Yeah. You're like, like everything in the world kind of stops and you're like, wait, what? And so I just wanted to share with you that the definition of grief is a mental suffering or distress caused by a loss or an affliction. And so it is totally normal for you to feel overwhelmed or anxious or sad, and even to have denial. In 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was the one who came out with the first book about the 5 stages of grief. And those were developed further into the 7 stages of grief. And I'll just quickly read them to you. Denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression and loneliness, and then the upward turn, reconstruction, and acceptance. And it really is a process where you go through these stages. Sometimes you won't go through all of them, or maybe they'll be out of order, but it is something that you might experience. I know that when my son had his clonic-tonic seizure, it was in public, and another parent trying to be helpful came to my husband and said, hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Your son's going to be okay. My child has epilepsy, and it's going to be okay. And my husband came and told me later, and I was like, no, that's not helpful, because my son doesn't have epilepsy. And it was just that complete, immediate denial of, no, this isn't what's wrong. Like,
yeah.
So we go through these stages, and eventually you'll get to acceptance and be like, okay, this is what's happening. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to, follow the doctor's protocols. I'm going to figure out what to do to help my child. But it is a process to get there. And I know that for Liz, she's kind of gone through this twice. So she went through this grieving stage with finding out that her daughter had epilepsy, and now she's kind of gone through it a second time. So I'll let her talk about that.
So the first time, like you said, it was the initial diagnosis. And the second time was more, we had gotten told that we were going to be able to do surgery, and that feeling of like, okay, I think this is going to be what we're going to be doing in the future. So far into it that we thought, they had found this spot in her temporal lobe, and they were saying that, this is probably going to be our next best thing. Medications weren't working. So we were like getting our hopes up. And then when you have that come crashing down, you go through that grieving process because you don't have that guarantee anymore. And I know that that was probably one of our biggest struggles. My cousin was talking to us about it, and she was saying, it's normal to have that grieving process because you had seen the future of what, how far she was going to come. She was probably going to be seizure free. It had a 65% success rate. There was so many things that you were going to get out of it. In the end, it's probably not going to work out because of things changing. They can't now diagnose and exactly find where her seizures are. They know it's in the temporal lobe, but they don't know how far deep into the lobe or into the skull or her brain that it is. So it was definitely interesting seeing on the seizure. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like an actual seizure log, but there's lots of brain waves on there. And I was able to find where the seizure was, but there was so much in front of it and chopping it up that it wasn't a clear picture of exactly where it's going to be located. And that happens a lot of times when it's a lot deeper because things get placed on top of it to where they can't see where it's supposed to be or where it is. So I know that Summer had said that she was definitely going through some grieving for her son.
Yeah, it was just, it was surprising. Like you kind of go through this like, well, is my son going to drive? Like these questions that come up, and is he going to find a medication that works, and is it going to really make them go away? And is he going to stop being depressed? Is he going to come out of this like dark cloud that the medications are putting on him? And he's just starting to want to drive and talking about like, oh, like I'm going to get my driver's license soon. And it's not really that cut and dry. It's a little bit of a question mark. And so when your child's going through that, and when he realizes, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to do that, it just puts more of that. You go through more of that depression and loneliness kind of stage in the grieving process. And so I think it does really, like, things continue to come up, and you kind of just have to move forward and take one step at a time. Just don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Just do what you need to do today to get through today. And then tomorrow you do the things you need to do for tomorrow, and don't get caught up in just worrying about these things, because then you're going to stay stuck in that grieving process. And we really need to get to acceptance. And I mean, that's really why we made this video, I think, because we know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to be lost and alone and not knowing what to do to help your child, and not knowing, what doctor to go to and what medications and all of these things that you're having to do, and experiencing, new tests that you've never even heard of before. It can be a very lonely process, and we just want you guys to know you are not alone.
I'm sure that your son is feeling that loneliness just by himself. Being a teenager, you had said that the medications were causing him to feel lonely. And so trying to create normalcy in your child's life while they're going through this grief process, but because they're grieving just as much as us as the parents are. And so trying to keep their normal life going, even though it's not normal, is difficult.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see what you're talking about.
Yeah. Even like sleepovers with grandma, it's like, well, do you have your medicine? Like, and does grandma know how to help and how to remind you to take this? Because we can't forget. And there's always these little things that come up, but we do try our best to make it like a typical childhood for our kids. And we don't want them to feel like they're I don't know, being, I don't know, what's the word? Like,
almost like,
right. We don't want them to feel different. You know, we want them to feel like,
well, and we don't want our kids to feel afraid either. And being afraid is not a good thing for this type of diagnosis, because that's where it can make you be really sad and depressed, and because you have that fear and anxiety already about, well, what if I have a seizure in the middle of class, or what if I have a seizure at the fair with a bunch of people surrounding me. It's like they already have all this anxiety built up.
yeah.
That we want to keep it normal as much as we can.
Yeah. Keep their life.
So our next week, we are going to be talking about things we hear as parents. There was a Facebook, on one of the Facebook groups, I had posted some really interesting, or I had heard some really interesting feedback from it. And I'm actually going to get to that. When did I post that, Summer? It was like yesterday?
Days, yeah, 1 or 2 days ago.
I think it was yesterday morning, I even think. And so it's things we hear is the topic, the title of the topic. And the Facebook comments blew up because I wanted to know, what are things that parents hear just as every day, or whatever their family has told them, and or what they hear from comments of other people in their life in general. And I already have over 16, because I know there's more on there that I haven't written down yet. So there has to be close to 25 comments. If they say, oh, your daughter will grow out of it. Well, not everyone does. So let's educate the person who's telling you that she'll grow out of it, so that they know how to not say something like that to the next person. I want to talk about how we can fix and educate more people and fix these comments.
Yeah. And help people to know how they should be responding. And then help us know how to respectfully educate others.
Yep. So we are going to sign off, and we will see you next week. And your story's not over.
Your story's just begun. Bye.